Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for June 23rd, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. So far, what we're seeing here is the previous session's resistance 2089s was defended over the last 2 weeks, and what we saw here recently was overnight trading. We pushed through that level, reaching a high back toward 2100, and have seen since a little bit of rejection back toward 94s. This is very, very important here. After the recent drop into 40s, price rallied and we're almost back toward the highs here. You can see we've been talking about this key level here and how bulls failed to get acceptance above that zone. Their stops got ran. Now we're all the way back up to that point here, seeing a run of the stops all the way back up. It's going to be important to see, does price close above 89s today? Does it close anywhere above this key level here, which is basically 2097s? That's right where we are. Closing back below that point would suggest a rejection, and that could get prices back toward value. Closing above that zone could imply further strength to the upside and perhaps a new high. So this is a difficult play here so far. We're watching as this thing continues to develop here around the key range from 2040 up to 2110, a midpoint at 2075.75. That's the key range to watch here. So we're going to continue to watch this develop. Overall, again, I'm watching 89s to see this price close above or below that zone. On an intraday basis, you can see here we have an overnight key range that is developed. If you bring up the midpoint on the day, we've basically reached the mid on the day as well. So we have an impulse move from here to here. You have your midpoint there. That's going to be a key range that you can watch the rest of the day. As of right now, bulls are looking to defend the previous session's high and VWAP for a shot at pushing to new highs. Failure to hold above 92s puts pressure on recent lows with a shot to retest 5-day VPOC at 2077. Here's a look at crude oil. Crude oil continues to trade around the HVN. We talked about this before. 49.78 is the composite high volume node. You can see how prices have chopped and formed an expanding range around it. Now we're back at it and trading and chopping around it again. This is where I mentioned before that this high volume node, this is where the market wants to trade. There's no real edge right now in the zone for traders. You have to watch the edges of the range. You have to watch for expansion. So right now, as long as price trades around the zone, very little edge. Should price rally and retest the previous month's high, that could be a short-term area to defend and bring it back down toward recent LVN support. But as of right now, not a whole lot to do, at least on a higher time frame basis, as price continues to trade around this HVN. Eventually, we should see expansion from this range, and it could spark the next key move. Given the current uptrending market, this is likely to resolve to the upside, but we got to continue to watch how price responds around this HVN. On an intraday basis, you can see that we bounced off of the 48.50s. 48.39 was the low. In the prior session, what we talked about in the trading room was that if prices push through this 49.90 zone, a return to it, 49.94, would likely be offered for a shot at seeing a move all the way back to this area of support here. And I mentioned that if price reaches the 48.50 level, look for a return back to 5-day VPOC. At the time, 5-day VPOC was 49.72. We had 49.78. So we've completed that night move in overnight trading. Again, today could be very, very similar. Should price see any rejection of prices above 50, look for a pushback across the range back toward 48.73 as this thing continues to trade in this wide trading range. All right, let's take a look at gold futures. Gold has reached the midpoint of the impulse range that we were looking for. We obviously had this low point right here, this high, and then right now we had 60.3 as the midpoint of that impulse move. So you had a drop until price couldn't go any lower, price rallied until it couldn't go any higher, and then it came right back to the midpoint of the range. That solidifies our key range now. So we now have a key range with a midpoint here at 1260, the bottom near 1200, we have the top near 1318, 1320, and now we have our key range to watch. So this is going to be very important here to see how this plays out. We could see further development around this point, but once this key range is set in stone as it is, it now gives us very important key levels to play from. So we're going to keep an eye on this gold for now. But as of right now, we're looking for this rejection up here to lead us back to the midpoint. That's basically done now. We could see a little bit more spillage to the downside as this thing drops toward value at 1238.5. But right now, as long as price remains below 1275, look for short-term weakness. Above 1275 opens up a retest at 1299. All right, lastly, let's take a look at the NQ. The NQ here tested the 44.34s. That was the big level that we were watching yesterday. As price rallied throughout the session early in the morning, we talked about watching 44.34. That's a spot where bears could reject. Above it opens up the stops. Yesterday, price came within a couple of ticks of hitting that level and then dropped nicely back toward value. In overnight trading, you see that price is pushed back above that zone. I mentioned before, if the bulls can run the stops above it, we could easily see a move back toward 44.86 and perhaps to new highs. Price got about halfway to the HVN here and has seen rejection, at least early on pre-market, and now prices are sitting right there on 44.34s. So this is going to be very important right now to see how that plays out as price trades right around that pivot. For now, very difficult to call either way. We obviously had our rejection day here, and we looked for a move lower. We saw this LVM begin to develop as bears were defending it, and that implies that obviously the buy stops are above if price cannot hold below that zone. This could have sparked a much bigger move, but didn't, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, if we look at the intraday time frame, you can see very similar to the ES, an impulse range has defined overnight from this low to this high. We now have the midpoint right here. If I bring the mid up for the day, you can see there it is right there, a little higher actually. So the mid is in. This is going to be the zone to watch. So you have this high for the day, 44.55 half. You have the low of the day at 09.25, the midpoint at 32 half. Watch that range right here. Bulls initially want to defend 34 and keep this thing bid. Failure to hold it opens up a move back to 5-day VPOC at 44.06. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the rest of the session. Good luck and trade well.